Have you ever posted a photo and then kept checking your phone to see how many likes it got? Or cooked a meal and felt weirdly anxious until someone said it was good? Or maybe you were sitting in a meeting with your boss and co-workers, had a genuinely great idea, but stayed quiet because you weren't sure how people would react. Have you ever caught yourself doing that? Needing validation doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. But if you're an adult who still can't feel okay without someone else's approval, there might be something deeper going on. Something that started long before you were old enough to understand it. And the fact that you're still carrying it might be one of the most common, most invisible, and most misunderstood effects of inner child wounds. Here's the paradox. The people who most need to hear that they're enough are usually the ones who trust it the least when they do. You can have 100 people tell you you're doing great, but if deep down you don't truly believe that about yourself, it won't fully land, and you may still go home feeling hollow. The same thing can happen when you're surrounded by love, but still feel fundamentally alone. Not because the love isn't there, but because some part of you may have learned unconsciously, I'm not worthy of receiving this. So even when love shows up, you don't fully let it in. And that's what can happen when people-pleasing and childhood trauma quietly rewire the way your brain processes safety, worth, and connection, usually before you even had words for any of those things. So if you've ever caught yourself wondering why you seek validation from a text reply, a compliment, a reaction, or even just someone's tone of voice, this is exactly where you need to be. Because today, we're going to walk through the real, everyday signs that your inner child is still running the show. And more importantly, how to heal your inner child in a way that actually makes a difference in your real life, not just in theory, not just on good days, but in the moments that actually count. Let's get into it. Sign number 1. You replay conversations in your head. Do you know that feeling when you walk away from a conversation and your brain just won't let it go? You're lying in bed, replaying every word, wondering if you came across as too much, too little, or just plain weird. It happens almost automatically, like your mind has a highlight reel on loop, and none of the highlights are good. That mental replay isn't random noise. It's telling you something important. That habit of second-guessing yourself is deeply connected to inner child wounds you probably don't realize you're carrying. When you grew up where love felt conditional on how well you performed or behaved, your nervous system learned a dangerous equation. Being liked equals being safe. So your brain got really good at scanning for threats, even in small talk. Imagine you're a child who said something honest at the dinner table and the room went cold. And in that moment, your brain may have quietly learned that being honest can be dangerous, so you have to choose your words carefully. Even if that means not expressing what you really feel. And over time, that can turn into something even deeper. Not fully allowing yourself to be who you truly are. Fast forward to adulthood, that same little kid, now in a work meeting or coffee chat, is still trying to control and be perfect on every sentence you say. This is why inner child healing is the key to understanding why you do the things you do. Next time you catch yourself replaying a conversation, pause and ask, am I reacting to what actually happened or to what I was once afraid would happen? That tiny question can make a big difference. And as you start exploring how to heal your inner child, those conversations start feeling a little less like minefields. But this is only one piece of the puzzle, and the next one might hit even closer to home. Sign number 2, someone's silence feels personal. Picture this, you send a message and then nothing. No reply, just silence. Within minutes, your brain is running worst-case scenarios. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? This person might just be busy, but your nervous system doesn't care about logic. It's already in full panic mode. This is one of those inner child wounds that hides in plain sight. If you dig deeper, you start to understand why you seek validation, even from something as small as a text reply. When emotional attention in childhood was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold for no clear reason, your brain learned that connection is unpredictable. And unpredictable things can feel dangerous. So silence doesn't just feel like silence anymore. It feels like a threat. Imagine growing up in a house where the electricity kept cutting out randomly. Eventually, you'd fear the dark even on sunny days. That's exactly what inconsistent emotional availability does. It creates a hypersensitivity to any sign that the lights might go out again. So when someone takes hours to text back, that little kid inside you isn't waiting for a message. They're waiting to find out if they're still loved. This is directly tied to people-pleasing and childhood trauma. When connection felt fragile, many of us learned to over-monitor other people's moods and silences just to stay ahead of rejection. How to heal your inner child starts with recognizing that someone's silence is almost never about you, and your worth was never dependent on someone else's response time. Speaking of worth, wait until you hear what happens when someone does give you a compliment. Sign number 3. Compliments feel amazing, but never last. Imagine someone says that you're doing an amazing job, and for a moment, everything feels right. You feel seen, maybe even invincible. But a few hours later, the doubt creeps back. The good feeling fades, and you're left wondering why something that felt so powerful in the morning feels so distant by the evening. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken. You're running on a system that was never fully installed. When you seek validation from the outside world, it's not because you're weak. It's because external approval was once the only approval available. Maybe praise was rare growing up, and when it came, it felt enormous because it carried the weight of everything you weren't getting regularly. That's one of the deepest inner child wounds, building your sense of self on a foundation that belongs to other people. Think of it like charging your phone with a broken cable. You get a little juice, feel good for a bit, but it never fully charges. Inner child healing is about finding your own power source. One practical way to start, keep a private daily log of 3 things you did well, written for your own eyes only, not for likes, not for feedback, just for you. Over time, it rewires the way your brain registers your own worth. This is the core of how to heal your inner child. Stop outsourcing your self-worth and start building it from the inside out. Books like The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk or Homecoming by John Bradshaw might genuinely change the way you see yourself. Because the same pattern that makes compliments fade too fast is the exact same one that makes decisions feel impossible without someone else's input. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Sign number 4. You struggle to make decisions without reassurance. When was the last time you made a decision without asking someone first? Maybe it was choosing what to wear, which job offer to take, or whether to send a message you'd been drafting for 40 minutes. And before doing anything, you asked, "What do you think? Is this okay?" It feels like a second opinion. But if it happens constantly, it's worth asking. Why do you seek validation even for things that are entirely yours to decide? When your opinions were regularly dismissed growing up, your brain learned a very specific lesson. My judgment can't be trusted. That followed you everywhere, into school, relationships, and every moment you reach for someone else's approval before trusting yourself. This is one of the most quietly painful inner child wounds, because it disguises itself as humility when really it's fear. One practical shift. Before asking someone else, write your own opinion down first. Just open your notes app and type what you actually think before any outside influence comes in. It trains you to hear your own voice again, maybe for the first time in a long time. This is a huge part of inner child healing, reclaiming your own authority, one small decision at a time. People-pleasing and childhood trauma are deeply connected here. Keeping others happy once kept you safe, so asking for reassurance became survival, not weakness. The more you practice listening to yourself, the less you'll need someone else to confirm you're on the right track. And if decisions are hard, wait until we talk about what happens when someone offers the tiniest bit of criticism. Sign number 5. Criticism hits harder than it should. Someone says your report needs a few tweaks, or a friend gently points out you've been a little distant. Logically, you know it's not a big deal, but by the time that feedback travels from your ears to your chest, it doesn't feel like a small note. It feels like a verdict. Like someone held up a mirror and said, "See, you're not good enough." And you can't shake it off, no matter how hard you try. When you were young, mistakes sometimes came with consequences way too big for the error. A disappointed look that lasted days, or a silence louder than any argument. Over time, your brain made a connection it was never supposed to make. When I get something wrong, I lose love. That's one of the most damaging inner child wounds, turning every imperfection into an identity crisis. It's also why people seek validation obsessively, collecting enough "you're doing great" moments to outweigh that old heavy feeling of not being enough. The practical work here is rewrite the sentence in your head. For example, you can say, "This needs improvement," and not "I am a failure." It means this specific thing can be better, nothing more. Inner child healing isn't about not feeling things. It's about making sure your feelings respond to what's actually happening, not to old ghosts. This is where how to heal your inner child gets interesting, separating your performance from your worth. Your work can need improvement, and you can still be completely enough. Those two things were never supposed to be linked. That was just a story your childhood wrote for you. People-pleasing and childhood trauma trained you to believe imperfection meant being unlovable. But that's not your truth. That's just your history. And history can be rewritten. Sign number 6. You change yourself to be liked. Be honest. Have you ever walked into a room and automatically adjusted your tone, your humor, your opinions, depending on who was there? Maybe you're one version of yourself with coworkers, another with family, someone else entirely with people you're trying to impress. The scary part isn't that it happens. It's that it happens so naturally you barely notice. You've become so good at reading the room that you forgot how to just be in it. This is one of the clearest signs that you may be afraid of fully being yourself and not being accepted for who you really are. Here's what nobody tells you. This didn't start as a flaw. It started as brilliance. When you were a child in an emotionally unpredictable environment, you learned to adapt fast, figuring out what version of you got the warmest response and hiding the parts that got dismissed. In that context, that was survival. But inner child wounds work like this. The strategies that protect a child can slowly not serve anymore to an adult. What saved you then is now keeping you from being fully, unapologetically yourself. Start small. Pick one situation this week where you say something true instead of something safe. Maybe you tell a friend you don't actually like the restaurant they suggested. Maybe you skip the "haha, just kidding" after something you genuinely meant. These tiny acts of authenticity build something real over time. This is the heart of inner child healing, coming back to the person you were before the world told you that person wasn't enough. How to heal your inner child means being inconsistent with other people's expectations and consistent with your own truth. Because why you seek validation so intensely is often tied to how much of yourself you've hidden to get it. But here's what's waiting just ahead. What happens when that outside confirmation goes completely quiet and nobody seems to notice you at all? Sign number 7. You feel empty when nobody notices you. There's a particular silence that hits different from all the others. Not the silence after an argument or the comfortable quiet of a peaceful afternoon. It's the silence of being unnoticed. No texts, no comments, no check-ins, and in that silence, something stirs. A hollow feeling you can't quite name but absolutely recognize. It's not just loneliness. It's something older, something that whispers, if nobody's paying attention, maybe you don't matter. That whisper isn't your adult voice, it's a much younger one. This is where inner child wounds and the need for external attention get deeply tangled. When attention and love felt like the same thing growing up, where being noticed meant being valued, your nervous system built a very specific alarm. And it doesn't go off when something dangerous happens. It goes off when nothing happens. When the phone stays still, when you post something and get crickets. This is a huge part of why you seek validation so constantly, not because you're needy, but because attention was once the closest thing to love you reliably received. Think about the last time you did something and felt genuinely proud before anyone else reacted. If that's hard to remember, that's important information. One practice that can shift this is what psychologists call self-witnessing, becoming your own audience. Start celebrating your own moments privately before sharing them publicly. Write it down, acknowledge it to yourself first. Over time, you start building what inner child healing is really about, an internal sense of worth that doesn't depend on who's watching. How to heal your inner child here is less about doing more to get noticed and more about learning to notice yourself. People-pleasing and childhood trauma often create people who are incredibly attuned to everyone else and almost completely disconnected from their own experience. You learn to look outward for signals of your worth because looking inward never felt safe. But here's the truth. That child who needed to be seen to feel real, they're still there, still waiting, not for the world to notice them, but for you to. And that's where everything begins to change. You've just walked through 7 patterns that most people experience every single day, but almost nobody connects back to their inner child. Knowing is only the beginning. Inner child healing happens in the small, brave, everyday moments, where you pause before asking for reassurance and check in with yourself first, where you let a compliment land without waiting for it to disappear, where you say something true instead of something safe. Those moments add up. And slowly, they rebuild something that maybe never got a proper chance, a version of you that feels okay from the inside out. Drop your answer in the comments. Which of these 7 signs hit closest to home for you? Your answers might surprise you. And reading what others share is sometimes exactly the reminder we need that we're not as alone as we think. If this resonated, please share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you love content about becoming a better version of yourself in a loving and compassionate way, subscribe and turn on notifications so we can keep growing together. We're just getting started. I genuinely hope this video helped you see yourself a little more clearly and maybe gave you something that can help you grow, heal, and move forward with more self-awareness. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end. I'll see you in the next video.